Before I begin, I'd like to point out that I have never reviewed a movie in my life, so be aware that I'm just a guy happily talking about Duel, and the amateur nature of this video is to be expected. I might even say a lot of stupid things, or maybe even false things that I hope doesn't happen. But you know, if I'm having fun, then I'm doing it right. Right? Oh, and spoiler alert too, for a movie that released before most of us here, so yeah. You know, it's cool to have a movie directed by Steven Spielberg and all, but it's very inspiring when it's one of his early works, and being about 25 at the time of its creation, it astonishes me that he pulled this off so early in his career. It's definitely something to be proud of, that's for sure, especially with the amount of ambition that went into it. I gotta give Spielberg some props here, and you know, this is the same man that went on to direct Jaws, Indiana Jones, Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park. The list goes on. I mean, what a wild career to have, and off to a fresh start with the classic that is Duel, which released in 1971, and is based on a short story by Richard Matheson, who also wrote classic episodes for The Twilight Zone, which is a beautiful show that I recommend anybody watch. So that's where Duel came from. Actually, I think it was a short story from Richard, but it was found in a Playboy magazine, so there's a fun fact of the day for you. So Duel predominantly centers around a man, David Mann that is, portrayed by Dennis Weaver, who actually appeared in the classic episode Shadowplay from The Twilight Zone. And from what I've seen from him, he has this great talent for being anxious and tense, with transition into total fear, to the point of being drowned in panic and sweat, which you really see in Duel. So if there was ever an example of perfect casting, this is it right here. He was born to play this role. Now, I should go over the story, but honestly, it's a very simple movie. Not in terms of creating it, as that was a journey all on its own, but the story itself is straightforward and easy to follow. Not much of a description needed. David Mann seems to be on a business trip of sorts, but the exciting part is when this nightmare of a truck appears in front of his car with all this smoke blasting out of it, and wow.
Talk about pollution.
Exactly. David then decides to overtake and pass the truck, which becomes a back and forth kind of thing. He moves to the front of the truck, then the truck moves in front of him, and then what do you know, it turns into this big cat and mouse chase, because now the truck driver is pissed and wants to kill Mr. Mann. And I mean it, this guy literally goes out of his way throughout this movie to try to end the life of David Mann, all because this simple red car overtook him. I mean, who wants to be breathing in that smoke? So yeah, spending the 90 or so minutes watching this, it's suspenseful, horrific, thrilling, and I love it. Edge of your seat kind of stuff. It's very exciting and simple, but sometimes that's all a movie needs, and Duel is what it needs to be. Plus for me, there's something very engrossing about a movie that mainly centers around one character. Now there may be other characters here and there, but when it's like 85 to 90% about that one man or woman, it can be very, very enjoyable for me. I think of movies like Castaway, Phone Booth, or even some Twilight Zone episodes, which I keep mentioning on here, like Where Is Everybody? It's mostly following one person and their journey, which can make for a very immersive experience. You're with them, you're following them, and it's just you and their world. I don't know why, but it just drags me in. So I think that's what makes Duel so interesting. It's a story following one person with no distractions or other scenes with characters talking. No, we're seeing this story all the way through, and that can result in being a favorite movie. There's also a very enjoyable commentary that Spielberg gives on Duel that you can probably find on YouTube, and I just really get a huge excitement listening to his process on the filming of it, talking about how putting it together in like 12 or 13 days when it was supposed to be done in 10, because this was all real. No soundstage, no green screen, and most certainly no CGI. He went out there on the road and actually did it, which is very inspiring as it looks good the way it is. And I'm glad we didn't get a version where it was all green screen, because it wouldn't have worked. I think Spielberg said it best, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, you know, with green screen, you have the person moving the steering wheel that way, and then the car is moving the other way, and I agree, those can look really wonky. But not here in Duel, because everything you see is all happening. It's legit, and I respect that immensely. I respect that he was passionate about this movie and didn't want to take shortcuts. I love it. And while the driving is brilliantly executed, just a fun and exciting chase, there are moments where he'll stop driving and actually get out of the car, and at one point, He literally runs at the truck, which turns the tables for a moment, you know? Now David is trying to get him, and I found that to be quite comedic. Or when he falls asleep in the car, and all of a sudden the sound of a train rushes by, which evidently freaks him out, as it does sound like the truck. Or when he goes into this cafe of some sorts, the movie slows down and becomes quite eerie, and gives off a creepy vibe. It's really nice, especially when we get to hear his inner dialogue. He's not talking out loud, we're just hearing his thoughts. And I love that. It becomes very chilling. And that's the thing about Duel. It can be very chilling, creepy, and atmospheric, which I think works perfectly with these kind of movies. It immerses you into the world, and you feel his fear. You feel his anxiety, the adrenaline, all in one. It's very, very beautiful. There's also a moment in the cafe where he thinks the truck driver is actually in there with him, and he's observing these men, and he's just looking at him, kind of thinking like, could be any of these guys, and we just don't know. We never get the answer. We never see the truck driver's face, ever. We have no idea who the man is. But I think that's pretty cool. It gives off a very mysterious kind of feeling. And at one point in the cafe, he does actually get into a fight with some poor guy because the paranoia completely takes over him. And you know, I really do feel terrible for this guy. Every time I see this scene, I just feel so bad for him. And yeah, it's just great. It's all very intense, but also quiet and eerie. The later half of Duel is when we really see the total panic that David goes through. Another favorite moment is when his radiator hose is failing and the car is like, I guess you could say, on its last wheel. And it's barely functioning at this point. He's struggling to get the car moving. And as a viewer, it's almost like I'm trying to control the car too, as I'm pretending to drive it. You know how sometimes we'll mimic the actions that we'll see in the scene? Like, that's what I'm like at this scene. I'm doing the same motions as he's doing, if that makes sense. It's one of those things that makes you just go, come on man, you can do this, and you're really rooting for him. Yeah, the movie's like a panic attack, but in a good way, or like a roller coaster ride. It's a lot of fun, and I think if you have an hour or so to spare, go watch it. It won't take up too much of your time, but there's so much more I can go into with this movie. Like, damn, you have this sweet soundtrack with the most memorable piece of music. Just beautiful, beautiful. I could talk about the mistakes that can be seen on some formats, such as being able to see Spielberg himself at the back of the car, or seeing his reflection in the phone booth window, which, to be fair, isn't that bad. I mean, the only reason I know about this is because he pointed that out himself in an interview, and I had to go back and look at it. But I didn't know that before, and I thought that was pretty funny. But really though, this movie is just so fun to watch. It's just an edge-of-your-seat kind of experience. And I think the message of the movie, whether it's intentional or not, is that this is a study of a man, and I'm probably getting a bit too dramatic here, but I think this incident that he goes through actually makes him braver, tougher, stronger. And there's even this very, I will admit, it's an odd scene where he's talking to his wife on the phone. Basically, she's mad at him for not standing up for her after a man apparently had tried to sexually assault her or something, and she wanted David to do something about it. But he's just like, no, it's no big deal. Forget about that man. It's nothing. So before the movie, before this incident anyway, he was probably a man who let the world just treat him however they want, and he didn't really do anything about it. Kind of like Walter White in Breaking Bad, like how he just becomes this like braver man, I suppose. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but I guess this incident that happens to David makes him braver at the end. He becomes in a strange way, a better man. I don't know. Or maybe years and years of therapy too, maybe. But I had a lot of fun watching, and I would recommend this movie to anybody who just loves horror or suspense. And the whole rating thing is odd to me, but I guess I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 or 9. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe that's too high. I don't know. I just really love this movie, so I assume that's a fair rating. I don't know. All I know is that it's awesome. And was a great, great beginning for this man right here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.